Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at In a Violent Nature. The new Chris Nash feature is a deconstruction of the slasher genre. It's that horror movie. You kind of got a character that's like Jason Voorhees, big lumbering man through the woods, serial killer chasing teenagers, but we stay with him the whole time. That's the whole gimmick. You're with him for 90 minutes. You just hang out with the killer. You don't focus on the victims. We saw the film. We're going to talk about it. We're also going to take a look at The First Omen, a film that we actually missed when it came out in late March, early April. I know because it came out right next to Immaculate, the other nun horror movie that we did watch. But The First Omen is a prequel to the Omen series that was started in the 70s. Damien, right? The child Antichrist. We took a look at it. We're going to tell you whether or not it's worth your time. We're going to take a look at some upcoming trailers. I know Moana 2's got a trailer out. There's a new Venom 3 trailer for Venom The Last Dance, Alien Romulus, all good things. Before we get to everything, we need to talk about the news. Our first story this week, Paramount and Skydance agree to terms of a merger deal. If you're a keen listener to the show or you just keep up with movie news, you may remember that Paramount has been up in the air, right? So people have been looking to buy them. Sony maybe made a deal, but we haven't really heard anything yet. Well, now we've got developments. Andy's going to tell us what this all means. Andy, Paramount and Skydance have a merger. Now what?
Right. So it's not official yet. It's kind of they've agreed to agree on the deal. There's a lot of business jargon in this article about who owns what shares and who's getting paid out what. But Paramount had been courted by both Sony and Apollo Global Management. They're going with Skydance because one of the terms of the deal is that Paramount will not be broken up, which is what the other suitors were going to do. We'll probably get actual terms either later today, because I know they have an earnings call, or sometime later this week. I found out that a woman named Sherry Redstone owns like 70% of Paramount, who inherited that from her father. So she's kind of the one who has to agree to the terms of the deal. But then, they'll combine. So Paramount and Skydance Animation. Who knows what that will look like? Who knows how that's gonna affect Paramount Plus? More to come on that.
It's definitely not a bad move for Skydance, especially in the animation department. If you hang out there too long, like Blue Sky, you might get acquired by Disney and then swiftly shut down. So it's a good thing that Skydance is finding a home, or at least bolstering its already good presence with something like Paramount. Paramount's finding a winner. Not exactly a W for Sony. I know them and Apollo Group was looking to get a hold of Paramount. Didn't really work out. And for what it's worth, I still think that may not be a bad deal because Sony is the only studio that doesn't have a streaming service, and therefore they're the only one that's not losing money in a streaming service because they're all doing poorly. So I don't know what that would look like for them. As for Paramount and Skydance, is there some kind of combination of film libraries people can look forward to? What's this going to mean for the people who don't speak movie?
I didn't look up all the properties, but it's things like Tom Cruise has worked very close with Paramount. That's who the Mission Impossible franchises are through. So there would be a combining of IPs for sure, which would mean more things available on Paramount from the animation division. But again, the deal's got to go through, be approved, and we'll probably get some more details in the coming weeks.
Keep it here for more. We're big on these movie theater mergers or movie studio mergers. You wouldn't know it, but they're big moves happen in the background. Genuinely affects where things are headed. Speaking of where things are headed, Amazon's making a He-Man movie. I thought it was going to be He-Man. Well, it is. And fortunately, we have a cast. We've got Nicholas Galitzine as the Master of the Universe. I know what you're thinking. That soft boy from Red, White, and Royal Blue? That soft boy from Anyone But You? That softy in bottoms? That's right. I guess he's going to bulk up, right? Andy, what do you know about the He-Man movie?
It's a property from Mattel, who of course made a ton of money on the Barbie movie, and have started licensing out all their stuff, but like crazy, to be made into film. So Master of the Universe is one of those. We don't really have a lot of story details. It's going to be interesting to see Galitzine. I assume is probably going to hop on the juice and start working out and beef up for the role, because He-Man's he's got that wrestler big physique. So it's going to be hitting the gym soon. But it's an interesting choice, but it's also it makes sense as like a career move, because it's like you do a big studio brand tie-in toy movie, you become the face of He-Man, and you do 3 or 4 films, you pay your bills for the next 6 years. I'm sure he's gonna have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, film's going to be coming from director Travis Knight, who formerly did the Bumblebee movie, which was a winner, I think, for the Transformers franchise, right? A lot of people were warm on that one, felt unique, kind of a bit more intimate story in a large franchise. And as far as we know, that's what the He-Man movie will be. Of course, those who don't know will remember the story of Prince Adam, aka He-Man, who crashes to Earth in a spaceship as a child, then decades later returns to his home planet to defend it from the evil forces of Skeletor and Castle Grayskull. Lots of potential, I think, for something stylistic and exciting. You've got a director who's worked with some nostalgia properties before, but I know He-Man hasn't been easy to get off the ground. Netflix was reportedly hanging on to the idea for a while, and they kind of squashed it in 2023, and then now Amazon's got something going. They've got their man. I don't know what the rest of the cast looks like. I know He-Man is a bit... well, I don't know. You're gonna have to get somebody to play Skeletor, and then there's some like weird fuzzy.
That's going to be interesting
Yeah.
casting for Skeletor for sure.
Yeah, it'll probably be Jack Black or something. But keep it here on Off Script for more. Obviously, nostalgia films aren't going away. They might even be the new thing. Who knows? Speaking of nostalgia, the Exorcist trilogy is taking a hot new direction. Yeah, y'all remember when Universal put out that new Exorcist movie? What was it? Double, double, toil and trouble? What'd you call it? 2 in 1, twice for fun?
Yes.
Yes, the new Exorcist film, which came out not long ago, did not do great. Now they've got a new director. They're going in a new direction with the next 2 films they're making. Andy, who's going to be the creative mastermind behind these things?
The great Mike Flanagan, who's becoming a new name in horror. Or he's had several very successful properties. He did The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, also Midnight Mass on Netflix, and Doctor Sleep, which we're a big fan of here on this show. So he's got a record of doing horror really well in TV form. And now he has the big challenge of taking the Exorcist property and doing something with it, trying to make this movie scary. There's like 1.5 good Exorcist movies and like 5 bad ones. So this is a real challenge, but Universal bought the rights for like $400 million. So they're still trying to get their money back. And unfortunately, David Gordon Green just didn't have a good vision for that first movie. He was very successful in the Halloween reboot of those 3 films. They made a lot of money, but he didn't really get it off the ground with The Exorcist. So now Mike Flanagan's going to get a crack at it.
It's funny that you say The Exorcist had like 4 or 5 bad ones and like 1 or 2 good movies in that franchise, because like we're about to talk about the First Omen here towards the end of the show, and like similar trappings, right? Like an old series that like kind of got burned out and then is kind of getting picked back up. But if anybody's going to do it, I think Mike Flanagan's the guy. We don't talk about prestige television a lot on Off Script because we're mostly a film podcast, but I've been a big enjoyer of Mike Flanagan's Netflix series. Fall House of Usher was the most recent one. Excellent, would recommend. Doctor Sleep is a delight. I even checked out Gerald's Game, which was a bit smaller. That was that straight to Netflix film starring Carla Gugino. Not bad. I think the man has got chops for sure. I think he is very capable of doing something unique. I think he's capable of doing something nostalgic, very haunting, and most importantly, he's kind of got a blank canvas, because as I understand it, they don't intend to really keep up with anything that was going on with the one that just came out. That one actually had Ellen Burstyn back in it from 1973. She was back. They got her. They had 2 girls that were possessed. I didn't even really see it, but
double the possession.
That's right. Double the fun. Double mint gum. And I think now there's some good, I don't know, good potential. Good headwinds, I think, for the Exorcist franchise with Mike Flanagan on board. I think that was a smart move.
Yeah, I think it's a smart move as well. I think it's a real challenge though, because I don't really know what direction you take the franchise. It was the first movie is kind of perfect, and it's hard to do the possession thing well and make it scary or make it thoughtful. So he's got a big challenge ahead of him for sure.
Yeah. Also, while we're on the subject, Mike Flanagan was just tweeting, he was in an interview that got tweeted a bunch just over the weekend about how a lot of his series and films don't have physical releases because Netflix doesn't do those. And it's funny because like Amazon is middling with them, so we'll see if they jump into it. But hopefully he can get this Exorcist movie or whatever it is out on Blu-ray, because you can't get a lot of his other stuff. Bummer. One more story from the box office. Garfield won the weekend. I'm disappointed. I don't want to say it. I don't want to say Garfield beat Furiosa, but it did. It's the second week out. Garfield's doing better. How's it going, Andy? What's going on at the box office?
It's rough. Furiosa not making it to Gastown this weekend. Garfield opened with 14 million, which is very low for the summer, but still more than Furiosa, which came in at 10 million. It is It's been like the worst May in like 30 years for the summer. I mean, just no one is coming out, and there's good and decent movies out to see, but it's just tastes of change. You don't have a big like comic book blockbuster or Fast and Furious kind of movie to get people out, and so like the whole month is, I mean, it's worse than like May and April in those non-summer months have been. So it's a rough start to the summer. We'll see if Bad Boys can maybe pick it up this weekend, but who knows?
Yeah. I don't know what to tell you. I went and saw Furiosa again. I did my part. Andy saw it twice. He's done his part. Have you seen Furiosa twice, dear listener? I'm not sure you have. I don't expect anybody to go see Furiosa again, but it bums me out, right? It's like how we did Blade Runner 2049. Like, excellent sci-fi, excellent cinema. People just don't turn out. And alternatively, I don't think Garfield's doing that great either, just because it's the family movie that's out right now. Like, it's going to get knocked out very soon by Despicable Me 4. I hear it's not even that awesome anyway for a kid's movie. I'm sure they'll make 3 more of them. But for what it's worth, like, I don't know. It is what it is, I guess.
The other thing, it's a success, the Garfield movie, because it's made, I think it only cost about $60 million, and it's made over 100. So it's actually doing really well, and it's doing well internationally as well. So yeah, we're probably gonna get a few more of these. Yeah. Again, the budget was modest by modern standards, and so I think that's helping it be a success.
He likes lasagna. I like lasagna. He hates Mondays. I hate Mondays. I'm Garfield. We should move on to the next segment of the show, I think. I'm going to be taking the summer on this one. And I'm a little intimidated, I think, as anybody should be about this feature, because it's unique and it's different. And I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go, but I'm excited to talk about it. The movie is In a Violent Nature. So, In a Violent Nature is the story of Johnny, a vengeful spirit that is resurrected at the beginning of the film when a golden locket is taken from his grave site, his burial site out in the woods in Ontario, Canada, by a couple of curious teenagers. He crawls out of the ground and he begins walking through the woods very quietly, just stalking slowly. Eventually, Johnny happens upon a highway. Eventually, he happens upon our teenagers, and terrible things befall them. It's a story you've seen a few times in cinema. It's very similar to Friday the 13th. Jason Voorhees, right? Big supernatural, spiritual stalker, tracks down a bunch of teenagers and gives them what for, except uniquely, In a Violent Nature is told from the perspective of our killer. This is the gimmick of In a Violent Nature, along with, I should say, its very unique pacing. And writer-director Chris Nash brings something specific to his vision of In a Violent Nature. Not only is it agonizingly slow with a functionally non-existent soundtrack, it is brutally gory. Good God, some of the most visceral kills I've ever seen in a theater. I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe my ears. I heard people threw up a can, and I'm excited to talk about why. The film is In a Violent Nature. 94 minutes, tidy, and quite a bit of fun, I think. Andy, what did you think of In a Violent Nature?
I definitely appreciated what it was trying to do, from not only showing the perspective of the slasher, the killer, but also taking this real, almost avant-garde, slow pace. I mean, there's a lot of walking behind this guy in the woods, and it kind of feels like a video game, almost like you're controlling them, because it's literally just him walking in nature from behind, third person. But there's something to it. We get, again, all these homages to classic slasher films of the 70s and 80s, lots of horror archetypes. There's a lot of humor. It's surprisingly funny in a lot of places. Really fantastic, gory kills. And it kind of goes in places maybe you don't expect, given most of how the film. I really appreciated what it was trying to do. Some people, they're going to say it's too slow. Some people even say it's not slow enough. But I appreciated the gesture.
Yeah, I've been really surprised by people that said this film isn't slow enough. I assume that was just like a joke take, but Twitter's a unique place and there's a lot of unique takes on it. And I think there's some people who mean that sincerely. This movie is almost too slow. I think it will be its biggest hurdle to overcome any kind of popularity. It's practically experimental. And when I went and saw it, I caught an early screening just a couple days before the Friday it dropped last Friday. And that was a pretty full theater, like full of people who were arriving to see this thing ahead of time, who'd been looking forward to it, who specifically booked this one-time screening to go see it. And even they were like getting phones out and were bored. Like, I think horror is a unique genre for people to kind of get into, and I think people like what they like and they like what they don't, and they don't like what they don't like. And I think a lot of like Blumhouse fans are going to feel like this is too different. But again, it's functionally experimental. Like, it really is. I'd put it right up there with something like Skinamarink. Like, you are in a different space with a very different pace that is very different from anything else that's currently out right now. And I think that's a good thing. I'm glad I saw it in theaters. Like, I'm excited to talk about it here. But I feel like that's kind of where you have to start talking about it, because you're just following this guy the whole movie and you never really get a break from that. And it's a lot of really long takes of just kind of trudging through the woods. It's also thoughtful. It's also a unique presentation on the nature of violence and the violence of nature, I think. And that's kind of expanded upon towards the end of the film with a really unique monologue from a character. But before we get too far into it, we should just be a bit more specific with the plot. So when I said at the beginning that like Johnny wakes up in the woods, crawls out of the ground, starts marching through till he finds a highway, I don't mean to say that in any kind of like, I don't know, veneer, like I'm not zipping over details. That's like the first 15 minutes of the movie. Like that's really kind of how it goes. And I think what you get in that time is a lot of like thoughtful introspection. A lot of time you can sit there and kind of really chew up what's going on, you know? I think anybody coming to In a Violent Nature knows what the gimmick is. Like, I think it's kind of the best way this movie works. I don't think you go to this movie not knowing how it works. And like just that opening, like first third is just real slow and real trotting and real thoughtful. It's our second act when we meet our teenagers. It's our second act when our man Johnny starts finding our teenagers. That is when we have a turn into absolute insane gore fest, which is nuts. And by the way, I should say a cast full of people I don't know, and actors and actresses I've never seen, and filmed almost entirely outdoors in Ontario. They shot all of this, I think, up there. And I've got some thoughts about the filmmaking, but before we get to it, Andy, the pace, what do you think so far?
Again, like you said, you got to know what you're getting into. It's like when we saw the movie Memoria with Tilda Swinton, which is like 10 times slower than this movie.
Yeah.
But that's the gimmick, and you know when you're going into that, that's what to expect. So it's a similar thing here. I mean, it works for me because you know it takes so long, and some people have pointed out it's the absurdity of the slasher, because there's times when it seems like it takes him a pretty long time to like walk up to someone, and I was just like, they would surely have heard his footsteps like 10 seconds before now. But I think it's kind of poking fun at itself a little bit by playing it really serious, because it's very stereotypical, almost Cabin in the Woods-esque, where we have our group of teenagers who are all jerks, and they all kind of deserve it. We're not unhappy to see them go. They're out at in a cabin in the woods by a lake, you know, like check all your horror movies off. But I mean, I appreciated it, but I'm a fan of avant-garde cinema, so I'm probably an outlier.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really speaks to like what we're watching on screen is talking about how the film was made. So I didn't know. I did a little research before we hopped on here and found out that they basically shot this movie twice, which is weird. So director Chris Nash explained that the first time they kind of shot it in two parts. And the first kind of half of production, they had a ballooning budget and they couldn't figure out how to get all this equipment out to the woods efficiently to get these like long takes of our man just like walking. Johnny, played by Ry Barrett, I should say, who's a big hulk of a man. I've never seen him in anything, but I think it's worth mentioning since he's primarily who we're watching. And apparently they'd shot like this whole film and it just didn't work. Like in editing, it didn't really work and didn't really come together. And while they were filming it, they had another creator filming kind of a documentary, the behind the scenes making of it, by a documentarian named Pierce Dirks. And so they decided functionally to go out and reshoot the whole movie. So they shot the whole thing again, and they couldn't get their original cinematographer back. He was like, "No, I'm not. I'm not doing this again.
I'm not going back out to the woods."
So they had the documentarian Pierce Dirks shoot the movie again, and what we're seeing is the second film. We're seeing In a Violent Nature, like kind of round two, and Nash explained very clearly that this was actually a really great experience because it gave him a second pass at it, right? Like it gave him another opportunity to see how it would work. It helped them cut down like how they were getting cameras out to the woods and these kind of like go kits they were using to get people out faster, to shoot more efficiently. And they kind of just like threw it together by the end because they were way over budget, right? Like it's a film that has been plagued with problems. And to watch it, it doesn't seem that way because it's so simple. The film lacks a soundtrack. I don't think there is one at all. It's just nature sounds, right? So it's just walking and nature sounds, right, and a lot of sound effects of crunching and bone and sinew, and like what you get, I think, for that trade-off of a lot of nothing happening is in key moments very, very good suspense. It's something I think this movie does very well. Very good suspense in a violent nature. When Johnny's standing behind a tree and the camera cuts to way over there, these people he's looking at are just having a conversation in the dark, and one of them breaks off to go smoke a cigarette on their own. You know exactly what's going to happen to that person. They're not going to make it out. Or when Johnny like stalks over to a lake and you see a couple of teenagers just swimming, having a good time, like you know things aren't going to work out for him. It's kind of delightful in that way, right? Like it manages to capture the best parts of an old slasher movie where you're just waiting for Jason Voorhees to take out these teenagers. You're waiting for Michael Myers to get the jump on Jamie Lee Curtis. Like you get to backseat all of that and like enjoy the thrill of the hunt from the weird like other side. You know, I think it's probably what Violent Nature does best.
Yeah, the kills and the stalking is really interesting because again, you see all those camera angles of like the killer out in the woods at night watching the teenagers from a distance outside the cabin. It's interesting to see that kind of opposite, and I guess you feel a little bit like the slasher does in that you have to do a lot of waiting and you just got to be patient and wait for your opportunity, which is again like the film is kind of funny in that way. It's poking fun at the genre because he literally just has to sit there for 10 minutes until like, okay, everyone's gone and this guy is gonna go use the bathroom all by himself in the woods. Well, he's definitely gonna not make it for that. So it's poking fun at the genre while also kind of embracing those tropes and archetypes.
I like the way the film like grows the lore of Johnny, like explains a bit more about him, because at first you don't get a whole lot. Like it's very simple. You see these teenagers take this locket. You even really hear them. You don't even see them physically do it. You just kind of hear them over the soundtrack. Over the sounds of nature, and then you see Johnny kind of climb out, and you know from the trailer that you kind of know where things are going, and the film gets rolling from there. But like I was wondering watching it, like how is this going to keep me glued in for 90 minutes? Because it can't just be a guy walking in the woods. And you actually get a lot of bleed over dialogue from other characters like teenagers or a park ranger, like having conversations that Johnny will functionally overhear as he is stalking them or walking towards them or waiting in the woods for them. There's a great campfire scene right at the end of Act 1 where like our teenagers are just talking casually around a campfire. Like you ever hear the story of the, what do you call them? The White Pine Slaughter or something like that? No, what's that? They're like smoking a joint. Like you just like, you know, like all the trappings of a traditional horror movie are in there, but you get the delight of seeing it from the other side of the fence. That's that deconstruction. And like Andy said, that's part of where you get a lot of really great humor. It's also a fantastic, like, really, what am I trying to say here? It plows the earth. It's a fantastic seedbed. That's it for like gruesome violence, because the movie does not shy away from these things. Like at first it seems like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. But like, no, it really takes you over the top and almost makes you feel a little guilty for having enjoyed like the journey as much as you did.
Yeah, one of the hallmarks of slashers of the 80s was kind of how gory they could be, try to gross out the audience. And this feels like it goes right in that same vein where we know that our cast of teenage characters are all going to be hopelessly murdered. But when it gets there, it's worse than you imagine. And he seems to have kind of a vendetta with one of the people, I'm not going to say who experiences a protracted violent kill. but it's part of like the absurdity of it for sure. But the kills are very surprising. I mean, I've seen a lot of violence in horror movies, and I was still like, oh my god, this is shocking.
Yeah, it was funny, like I said, at that early screening because we had some people who were really excited for this movie. So like when it comes up to it and Johnny's about to get somebody, you could hear some guy in there that's like, yeah, yeah, like you could hear people getting excited, and then would go into these like one of these like really long, brutal scenes, and everybody's just like. You could hear a pin drop in that theater, like just absolute silence. Everybody's just like watching the horror. And then afterwards, like a mom and dad get up and leave. You know, it's like, yeah, like this is awesome. And like I think like those are the things that work best about this movie, but also like it's not going to be the kind of slasher where you can like jab your friends with your elbow and be like, "Ah, look at this," you know, like it takes a really long time to get there. And I think the experience of that is good. I think that's the commentary the film's trying to make in its title, In a Violent Nature. That's the commentary the film is trying to make in its presentation, with Johnny trudging through the woods for these really, really long takes. Stuff that was so long they said they had to cut it way back in editing. There's some good jump cuts that make it work, but like even still, I think people will get bored. And I think probably tragically, I think the best parts of In a Violent Nature may be reduced to like clips on YouTube and TikTok that you'll see like in the future. Like, hey, here's this 2-minute sequence from this.
Watch it in 96 parts.
Yeah, because I don't think people will want to come back and like spend the time with it. But I do think what's here is unique and special. And I think Nash has stumbled onto something really cool, even if he did have to shoot it twice. And I like what's happening here overall. Like I came away pleased with this, whereas like some people in my theater were like notably bored, getting phones out, like, oh, it sucks. Like I couldn't believe it. What do these people come to movies for? It's ridiculous.
Heretics. Well, and it's like we had a conversation about this before the show that and you had pointed out that this is a lot like in the vein of Skinamarink, but also that the director has done something unique and that stands out. And now it's the big question of, well, what do you do next? What do you do with that little burst of success that you just had?
Right. Like I don't know if this gimmick works twice. I don't know if you can do like the Freddy Krueger stalks somebody through dreams for 90 minutes movie. Maybe you could, like, but I don't know if this formula works again, but the deconstruction of genre works. And I think his place in horror is unique. And like, I think there's somewhere Chris Nash could go next. I just don't know where. But for what's here, In a Violent Nature, I think is uniquely special. So I don't know if I would. I don't know when I'll watch it again. Like it's one of the, I don't know if I'm going to run out and buy the Blu-ray. Maybe it means a lot to somebody. I'm not sure it meant a lot to me. Any other thoughts or recommendations, Andy?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend In a Violent Nature?
I would recommend it to. It's definitely not for everyone. Definitely for those interested in the boldest of cinema, in avant-garde and experimental film, your cinema head, that kind of thing. If you're looking for something different and strange and unique, and that you have a lot of patience for, it's definitely the movie for you. Probably not a recommend for like general audiences or like sit at home with the family or your parents. It is really grisly, the kills, but I think if you're a fan of horror, you should at least give it a try. And if you're a fan of, like I said, avant-garde or experimental cinema, definitely check it out.
Couldn't agree more. I think horror heads are going to eat good with this one. I think Skinamarink fans are going to like this one. I think if you were really into Skinamarink and you don't get why other people weren't into it, you should definitely go see In a Violent Nature. Like I think there's a certain similarity to them in their pacing and presentation that puts evil on the screen in like a wholly unique way. Unfortunately, a lot of people will find that boring, and I don't. But I don't know, man. It's unique. I'm glad I watched In a Violent Nature in a theater, though. Let me tell you, it will not hit the same on a streamer. It won't be the same when you're hitting play on MGM Plus. You know what I mean? With that, we should move on to our middle segment. I'm going to be talking about some exciting things that are coming out soon. Excited to get into these. Andy, what do we call this segment?
It's time for the trailer park. So we're going to be looking at a number of trailers today. Bunch of stuff dropping within the last week. First up is Moana 2. Disney's follow-up to 2016, 17 Moana, the animated film. Big success, which starred Alihi Carvalho and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Big follow-up to that. It comes out the same day as Wicked, November 27th. Those are going to be going head-to-head. In the trailer, we see Moana, I almost couldn't remember her name, Moana, hear a call from across the sea, something different, something that calls to her, a people across the ocean that she's going to go out and visit. We don't really get a lot of plot details out that, but we do see all our chicken is back, a chicken sidekick and pig sidekick, and of course Maui, played by Dwayne Johnson. The animation looks great. This is probably going to be a hit. Will be interesting to see this going up against Wicked, though.
Definitely. I think this trailer is weak. I think Moana 2 trailer is a weak trailer. You know how they say that when they put out a trailer for an animated feature, that the only parts of the film that are animated so far are this trailer. Like, they just start there. That's how animation works now, and then they just push their studio, so they're overworked and underpaid and stressed out till they barely get this film over the finish line. It's how it works with Elemental. It's how it works with all of Disney's features. The Moana 2 trailer is really weak. It doesn't show a lot. It's mostly on the same island where she starts, with a couple shots of family. There's like a shot of a bolt of lightning, a shot of a whale, one shot of the Dwayne Johnson character. That's really it. There's nothing really here. I was like, oh boy, you guys don't have this made yet. You're just figuring it out. And I know it's supposed to be coming off of what was going to be a limited series on Disney Plus. They were going to do like a few episodes and turn it into something, but it doesn't seem like they even have that together yet. So in the most cynical take possible on the Moana 2 trailer from a man who is by no means the target audience for Moana 2, I want to say this movie looks weak. That's what I think. I think it looks weak. I expect better. Maybe the next trailer will be cooler, right? Maybe like Andy said, maybe they need that second Wicked trailer, like to give it some smoke and really juice it up. Because if this is going against Wicked, like I think Wicked's going to take the weekend, but maybe not. Moana also made like $800 million or something. And that's Moana 2. Our next trailer is for Wolves. I would say Wolves with a V, but honestly, it's not pronounced Wolves with a V. It's Wolves with an S. A woman has some kind of crazy incident happen in her apartment. I think it's a burglar at the beginning of the trailer. And this man falls dead with a crash, and she has to get him out of her apartment. So she calls a fixer with this one phone number that she's got, and George Clooney arrives with rubber gloves and a black suit, and he says, there's nobody like me. I'm the only person who can solve problems like this. And then right then, Brad Pitt shows up in rubber gloves and a black suit, and he says, who's that guy? I thought I was your fixer. Yes, two fixer hitman contractors played by George Clooney and Brad Pitt have to work together to solve some sort of crime in Wolves. It is an Apple original, but I know Sony Pictures is producing it, and I know it stars George Clooney and Brad Pitt, and directed by John Watts, who did those Spider-Man movies. The last three Spider-Mans were all pretty good. Everybody liked those movies. This is what he's doing now. Wrote and directed Wolves. It's an original script from him. Andy, what do you think of the trailer?
I think this looks like a lot of fun. It's kind of a little bit more like an older school kind of movie where you got these two big stars. It's an action comedy. It's funny because this is very similar to George Clooney's character in Michael Clayton, who is also a fixer. That movie's way more serious than this. The trailer kind of gives a lot away. Our dead body turns out to still be alive and turns out to be some sort of drug mule, and they get caught in some conspiracy, and it's bigger than them, and we got to work our way to the top, but also stay alive because people are after us, and there's a detective after us as well. It's a perfect September release. Like, it's too weak for the summer, but it'll be perfect for those interim months.
Yeah. Perfect. And like they nailed their audience perfect. Like, they know that, Gen X and boomers are going to be watching this, and some millennials. You got Clooney and Pitt doing their thing. Like, love it. Fun script, bouncy. Wolves. Probably going to do great.
Moving on to our next trailer is Venom: The Last Dance, the third film in Sony's Venom universe, starring Tom Hardy as Venom. Tom Hardy loves to do a voice, and in this movie he gets to do two. Because he plays Eddie Brock, and then he plays the Venom character. We don't get a whole lot of plot details other than there's more Venom-like creatures, symbiotes coming to Earth. They got to work together, survive, fight the bad guys. These are always kind of silly, a lot of kind of bathroom humor, for lack of a better term, but man, they're funny and they work. Like, they make a lot of money, and this actually looks better than the other two films, so I'm actually kind of excited. There's the Venom horse that you see a glimpse of, which is kind of amazing and everyone's raving about.
Yeah, I know I tweeted about this, but I mean it. They should have just made a Venom horse movie, because that horse is only going to be in one scene, and like, it's already gotten so much more attention than anything else going on here. But I agree, it does look better than the last couple. Infamously, I was not warm on the last couple of Venom movies. I've come around on them a bit since as kind of goofy films, I guess, because that's what people have embraced them as. But It looks like this movie's doing the Back to the Future Part 3 thing, like the Wild West Venom. You know what I mean? He's like out in the desert running around. He's got a horse now. But I think that's probably the shakeup it needed, because like the second one just felt a lot like the first film, and I think there seems to be a bit more room to run here. We'll see how Venom does. It will do numbers overseas. Dude, they're going to do gangbusters overseas if it can't stop Venom overseas. One more film to talk about on this list. We're going to talk about the trailer for Alien Romulus. So there was already a teaser for this. Fede Alvarez, director of Evil Dead 2012, is doing a new Alien film. We talked about this trailer, a teaser already, but we get a bit more here. Kaylee Spaney is some kind of young space engineer, settler who is traveling up to some sort of space station where she is chasing some kind of dream. I think she's got a lover or a friend with her, some kind of man, some man in her life who's probably telling her what to do. And she arrives up there for work and prosperity, but alien happens, right? Like, obviously, face huggers, weird crawly things, flashing strobe lights, an airlock that opens. I'm not really sure, but what I can say is Alien Romulus looks to have a lot of the elements that made Alien and Aliens popular. Fede Alvarez has talked about incorporating both of these in this feature. It's not a Ridley Scott movie like Prometheus or Alien Covenant, but apparently he signed off on it. He said it's pretty good. Andy, what do you think of the trailer for Alien Romulus?
I think this looks pretty good. Lots of action, lots of suspense, lots of face huggers and aliens. And it seems like maybe someone was breeding these on the space station, because they seem to break out of like a bunch of like these chambered pods. We see a lot of people get killed in this trailer, so that means even more are going to get killed in the movie. It being named Romulus is interesting. That of course refers to the founding of Rome, so it'll be interesting to see how this kind of plays into the larger alien mythos. But this looks like a lot of fun. Kaylee Spaney's real hot right now. She was in Civil War not too long ago. Now she's gonna be at the end of the summer. I'm pretty excited about this.
Dude, Kaylee Spaney might be like genre proof. Like, I already heard she was great in Priscilla, which I didn't catch. Andy caught it. We have a review out for it. She was excellent in Civil War. Here she's doing something totally different again. Like, watch out, dude. Kaylee Spaney's got chops. And yeah, that's the thing. And that's
and that's coming out at the end of mid-August, August 16th, so end of the summer. Scares right before as you go back to school.
Mid-August. I just realized I was terrible at saying when the movies I was talking about were coming out. Thank you for covering for me. With that, we should move on to our final review of the episode. Andy's going to be taking the summer on this one. Very excited to talk about this, because this is one we missed. We don't miss a lot of movies on this show, but sometimes one gets by us. It happens. But now we're back, and we're going to talk about it. Andy, what are we talking about?
The First Omen. So this is a prequel film of the Omen, the 1976 film, which starred Gregory Peck, big horror hit, which of course deals with the this powerful senator who adopts a child who turns out to be the Antichrist, and kills a bunch of people in that movie. It's a classic. The First Omen is a prequel to that, leads up to the events and follows very closely to a movie we've already seen called Immaculate, the one that starred Sydney Sweeney. Nearly identical plot lines at the beginning. We meet Nell Tiger Free, who plays Sister Margaret. She's a young nun who has come from the States, just like an Immaculate, come to Italy, just like an Immaculate, to take the veil, to take her vows as a nun. She's working at this orphanage where all these troubled girls are. That she meets a young Carlita, who is, things aren't right at the orphanage. There's you hear screams. She sees things. She sees a bunch of like medical stuff happening behind closed doors. Something's not quite right. Carlita's not quite right. There's something going on. We also have Ralph Ineson, who of course played the Green Knight himself and was also in The Witch, who plays Father Brennan and is kind of on the hunt for the demon child, or he knows that something's not going on right, and he's trying to kind of get into the orphanage and get records and try to pinpoint stuff. The plot is real messy. There's a lot going on to lead up to the Omen film, but that's our setup. Zach, what'd you think?
So the First Omen, I think, is probably one of the better Omen movies. I think that's the best place to start talking about this movie. Because for what it does, I think it does a good job. I think first time feature director Arkasha Stevenson is bringing a lot of style to the table. I think it's got some good casting. I was surprised in one scene to see Ralph Ineson and think, oh man, that's that guy from the Green Knight. I know him. And then I saw Bill Nye and was like, oh god, Bill Nye's in this movie. And then Charles Dance shows up. Man, Charles Dance from Game of Thrones. Like, great casting. Like, you got some good numbers here. I think there's some good visual flair in the First Omen. I think my problem with the First Omen comes in the fact that it came just 14 days in theaters after Immaculate, the Sydney Sweeney feature, and they have so much in common, dude. It's like in, what was it, 98 when Pixar did A Bug's Life and DreamWorks did Ants, like right next to each other, or when Christopher Nolan's The Prestige came out at Warner Brothers, and just like half a month later, I think Sony put out The Illusionist starring Edward Norton, both period magic movies. Like, two studios have functionally produced the same film right next to each other. And it's difficult for me to avoid comparing them because Immaculate is notably better. So it's weird for me to talk about the First Omen, but I'm excited to get into it. Where do you want to start talking about it, Andy?
Oh gosh, we can talk about the plot. One of the things that really bothered me about this is the pacing is kind of terrible. It takes us like the whole first act or almost the first hour to get to the premise where we know an Omen movie has to do with some possessed child or someone who's the Antichrist or is going to birth the Antichrist. It takes us like an hour to get there. We have a good opening scene where Ralph Ineson and Charles Dance talk about some conspiracy and they have a photo in it. We got to find this girl. And then there's like 40 minutes of Nell Tiger Free's character. She's coming to Rome. She's looking to be, and her Italian isn't very good, just like in Immaculate. And there's a lot to it's not scary at all. Like, none of the creepy stuff creeps you out. None of the jump scares scare you. The pacing is just not real good. I think you could have shortened this up because it's a full 2 hours. You could have shortened it up and it probably would have worked a lot better.
I do think there's some tremendous visuals. Like, I think that's worth mentioning in this movie. I think Immaculate had big visuals too. Both surprisingly deep, I think, for what they're given. But First Omen is trying to lead into, as kind of a prequel, it's trying to lead into the 1970s film where you have Damien, the child of the Antichrist, who's born of a jackal. Here in the First Omen, I didn't really know where it was headed. Maybe the trailer gives it away more, but I figured since we were revisiting, I didn't want to go back and rewatch it. I just thought, let me go in fresh, no trailer. I'll just see where it ends up. And like, I could not shake the fact that it just keeps running into things that Immaculate did. Like, you get the nuns and you get the woman from America who, yeah, like you said, can't speak Italian very well. And people like, oh, it's okay, you're good here. And then it's like, oh, there's a whole having pregnancy and birth thing, which is weird. And then she has weird dreams and then she might be pregnant. I'm just like, oh boy, like, wow, these things are just like each other. And that's not a good way to review a movie. Like, that's no good way to kind of fall into these things. And I think the things the movie does well is A, the visuals, B, I think the casting's creative. Like I said at the top, like you got some good older fathers, right? Ralph Ineson and Charles Dance. Nell Tiger Free is actually really, really, I'm going to say understated is our hero. Like, she does a lot of work to kind of, as Sister Margaret, to kind of, I'll put the film on her back, but like carry us through the experience of like a nun who is in this place where things are clearly starting to go wrong, and she's devoting herself to it and questioning whether or not this is the right thing to do. The film actually has a lot of fun in the lore with like, why would you want to birth the Antichrist, right? That's something those Omen movies did well because, of course, people have fallen out of love with God. And if there's a devil for them to be afraid of, then they will fall back into the church. That was a whole thing in the 70s, the Satanic Panic. Like, that stuff I think all works well here. I think the biggest hindrance for the film is its script. Like, I think that's not something that Arkasha Stevenson's going to direct around, you know, like it has to end at a certain point. It has to lead somewhere. Whereas Immaculate had had the freedom to go wherever. Like, I had no idea where Immaculate was going to end, but here, like, I understand that Damien, the child of the Antichrist, is coming, and this is a whole thing. Like, it's like I knew too much. It's like I knew too much, Andy. If I'd seen this in a vacuum, it would have been better for me, I think.
Yeah, but possibly. I was going to say Immaculate does a much better job of having clear themes about women's bodily autonomy and themes related to that. This kind of, it does a lot of those same has a lot of those same beats, but it doesn't really connect those dots about women just controlling their own bodies, their own destinies. It just kind of glosses over that. The effects are a lot better. Like, this has a better budget. I wish Immaculate had the budget that this movie had. It would have been even more fantastic, because we do get a lot of special effects in separate places. They are filming in on location in Rome, I think it is. So that stuff works, but my biggest issue with this is just the pacing was just, it drags. It took so long to get to the thing that we were waiting for. The beach makes you old is what what we call that from now on. We know the beach makes you old. Let's get to the part where the beach makes you old. And it doesn't tie in very well. I think that's one of the reasons the very first, the Omen, the original 1976 works really well, is kind of the mystery of it all. That's, why is this kid like this? Where does he come from? You slowly unravel this conspiracy, and it's really kind of haunting and intriguing. And this has none of that. Like, you're never pulled in by the who's pulling the strings. It's like, well, clearly everyone at this orphanage is in on it. Everyone's evil. Everyone's trying to like do things that they're not. It just doesn't do a good job of really bringing you into like having some sort of mystery. When the twists and reveals come, you just kind of roll your eyes. You're like, nothing is a surprise.
Yeah. Like some good send-ups of old Italian horror. It's worth mentioning, like some big visuals. A really cool opening scene with this like big stained glass thing that shatters and falls. Like, I think that stuff's all really creative. Also worth mentioning, Ishtar Curry Wilson, who plays Sister Angelica in this film. She's an Australian actress. I've never seen her in anything else. She is wildly creepy and needs more work immediately. You should put this girl in like three Hollywood films a year. She's great. She's awesome. Super weird. Like, love her. Otherwise, like, I don't know. I feel like the First Omen is just a little bit, I don't want to say lacking. It's difficult to, it's a film that suffers from its own kind of premise, right? Like I heard Abigail, that vampire ballerina movie that came out from Radio Silence just a couple months ago. Apparently Abigail has the same problem. They don't get to like the girl is a vampire till like an hour into the movie. It's gosh. My God, they tell you that in 30 seconds in the trailer, like, come on. It's a film that like you can't, it's hard to watch around because you already understand where it's going. And like, while I do think it is one of the better Omen films, probably the second best one after the first one. And I know there was a 2006 remake that was not the heat.
I've seen that. It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I haven't seen it. I wouldn't know. I think this is still a unique artist approaching the series in a way that does give space to another feature that could continue being good. I do think this is a new kick up for the First Omen. I think for the Omen series, like, I think there is ground to continue here. But this one doesn't quite have the mustard. You know what I mean? If I ordered this at a bar, I'd enjoy it, and then I'd order a different drink. That's what I think. Yeah.
Well, I don't really have much more to say.
I know. I feel like I'm running out of gas on it. I wish I could tell you the soundtrack was awesome. Like, I think I'm already trying to, I shouldn't get ahead of like what I think people are going to say on YouTube, because I don't do this show because I'm not scared of what people think, but also I feel like people are going to roast us for saying like, how could you not like this movie? I can't believe you thought it sucked. It's like, I wouldn't tell you that I didn't like the First Omen. I like the First Omen. I would tell you to go watch Immaculate, a movie that came out 2 weeks before and just better. Like, I don't know. Immaculate just has a bit more freedom to move around in its space. And Sydney Sweeney's a lot of fun. Like, and people are creepier in Immaculate, and the jump scares are better in Immaculate. Like, I just feel like Immaculate just does everything a little bit better. And I hate that movies have to come out next to each other like this. And I'm going to end up being so biased about them. But here I am. I'm honest. That's where I'm at. Yeah. And with that, I'm sorry.
I think it was a small financial success. I think it's done over 50 million, and I'm not sure what the budget was, but the budget seems pretty small. So I think it's doing well for what it is.
Yeah, I'd like to see Stevenson get some like a more original script in her hands. I think she could do something really special. I think this is a great jumping off point, though. Andy, would you recommend The First Omen?
I'm going to say soft pass, unless you're a big Omen fan, like you're an Omen completionist, and you've seen all of them, and you want to. But no, I didn't enjoy this. It's not scary. It's too long. It's dreadfully slow. There are some good performances. I think Nell Tiger Free is very reserved. She does a good job of seeming like a very plain, naive person. Ralph Ineson collecting a paycheck and donating his great voice to this film. But otherwise, I'd say probably pass on this.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. It's fine. If you're a horror head, I would tell you to watch Immaculate. And if you watched Immaculate and you want to check this one out, I would tell you to go in thinking as little of Immaculate as you can, and the film will still run you into it because they're just so similar. Like it's like they were built off two spec. It's like both movies came from the same spec script. Like they're just too close to each other. But that being said, yeah, I think there's some good stuff here. If you're an Omen head, go for it, right? Yeah, if you got the T-shirt
right.
and you've read the book, go off. Like, and again, I do think it's a good place for what's next. Like, whereas Universal's last Exorcist movie left them in a lurch, now they're finding Mike Flanagan to take them in a new direction. You could just run on this. This is good. This is good. This is more than passable, but it's just not great. And like, I think there's a better example of that readily available, and that just happened to be the way it is. It's a terrible thing for me to judge a movie on, but with that, we should wrap up the show. Andy, what are we watching next week?
So we're actually taking a couple of weeks off because we're both traveling. So we're going to be back on June 18th with Inside Out 2, the sequel to the 2013-2014 follow-up by Disney Pixar, and Hitman, which is Glenn Powell's new Hitman comedy, something or other, which is actually out this Friday on Netflix. So we'll be back with those two. Some other FYI releases. Bad Boys Ride or Die comes out this Friday. The Watchers, which is the daughter of M. Night Shyamalan's horror film, also comes out this Friday. And later, towards the end of the month, we'll be taking a look at The Bike Riders and Kinds of Kindness. But for next show, Inside Out 2 and Hitman.
Very much looking forward to Hitman. I've seen people say it's either possibly the best film of the year or like a total snooze fest. So it's going to be one or the other, right? Can't wait. And then Inside Out 2, I saw what was a Hollywood Reporter trying to sneak by us today and says this was Pixar's first sequel since 2019 with Toy Story 4. And it's like, did we all see Lightyear? I mean, Lightyear wasn't technically a sequel, but like they definitely made Toy Story 4 and then they made another Toy Story movie. So I feel like that might qualify, but either way, if you enjoyed what we're doing here on the show, if you like movies and you don't like paying for them and you like to listen to a podcast where people tell you about them, the best way to keep listening to that podcast is subscribe to Off Script Film Review. Subscribe to your boys right here on the show. We like watching movies. We do it every week, and we like telling you about them. So if you want us to, tell you directly from creator to listener as the way it should be, the best way to do that is to subscribe to the show. You can also leave a rating and review wherever applicable. We'd appreciate it. It means more to us than you'd know. You might think, rating on iTunes, that can't be that big of a deal. It is. It helps us immensely. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartMedia, wherever you're at, we're there. You might be listening to us there right now. Slide us a little love. Huh? Slip us a little something in the comments. We'd appreciate it. Maybe 5-star? Probably not a 4. Probably a 5. Feels like a 5 to me. If I had to put one on there, I'd say it's 5 stars, but that's just me. You can also find us on YouTube where we're uploading stuff every single week. Big things happening on the YouTube channel. Come check it out. We're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those usual places. You can follow us over there too. You can comment, you can like, you can subscribe, all the exciting things you do. Mail at offscriptfilmreview.com is our email. If you want to hit us direct, you can send us an email, whatever you're thinking about. And if you want to check out our website, we have additional content, interviews, stuff going on at offscriptfilmreview.com. Boy, what a week at the movies. From all of us at Offscript, the home of bold cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.